think we can start, and then more people will keep joining. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here, and welcome to this latest edition of the Destiny Roadshow webinar. Today, it's all about the UrbanSquare use case. So I'm here on behalf of ESA, one of the three entities entrusted in the development of the Destination Earth initiative, specifically the entity that is looking at the Destiny platform. And today with me are also representatives from the UrbanSquare use case, so imperative space, Sistema, Mosaica, and Murmuration. And today we will be exploring how the UrbanSquare use case is supporting decision makers in assessing climate-related threats for urban spaces and urban developments. So we will be looking at this use case that has 4 different components for managing and predicting 4 different elements that are affecting urban spaces: air quality, urban heat island, flood and resources, and sea level rise and storm surges. So I'm giving just a short introduction now. Feel free to hang out in the chat. Let us know if there are any issues, or let us know where you're from and what you're looking forward to in this webinar. There's also a Q&A section. We will be collecting your questions, and we will be answering them in a dedicated Q&A slot near the end of the webinar. I will then pass it off to the project coordinator that will introduce the challenge, understanding how it's possible to mitigate the impacts of these various effects to urban spaces. We will then showcase how the tool works and what the possibilities are for the enhancements through the Destiny initiative, and also what its future prospects are after the end of the use case period. And then, of course, we will have the Q&A session. So without taking too much time, the Destiny platform, again, as I said, is the component of Destination Earth that is developed by ESA. It is now online, so you can go look at it for yourself. And UrbanSquare is not. It will be soon uploaded to will be soon accessible. Sorry, through the the Destiny platform. My colleague Valeria, if you could put the link to the Destiny platform in the chat. ESA has 5 use cases that we're doing currently a series of webinars on. We have already done the webinar on DRE and City Nexus, so this is the 3rd one. If you have been to the previous webinars, I'm sure you know how these work so far. If not, we will put the link to those ones, to the recordings of those in the chat as well. And looking forward to a very fruitful 3rd one, and looking forward to your questions and seeing the discussion that comes out of this one as well. So with that said, I will now pass to Fabien Castel, who is the project coordinator of UrbanSquare. And Fabien, the floor is yours to introduce the challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diego, and thank you all for joining this webinar. So yeah, let's talk about UrbanSquare. So first, the challenges, because it comes from here. The idea of UrbanSquare came from the constatation, the realization that urban areas are facing a number of challenges that are linked to climate change. Climate change is creating a growing level of risks in these urban areas that are densely populated. And UrbanSquare aims at creating a tool to assess all these risks. And the idea is to build a unified tool that will address very different thematic fields. We mentioned here air pollution, heat waves, and specifically the urban heat island effect. We have here flooding, we have sea level rise and storm surge on coastal cities. We also have damages from damages on infrastructures and specifically on roads. And we also have the impact that climate risk can have on in the resources availability. So now, well, we will do some focus on some specific thematics during the presentation. And now we will, as we are speaking about challenges, we will do our first focus on the field of hydrology and flooding prevention. And I will let the floor to Mariana to present us this field and how we address it in UrbanSquare. Mariana, the floor is yours.
Yes, hi. So river discharge is the volume of water flowing through a river channel, measured at any given point in cubic meters. And high river discharge can lead to flooding, while the low river discharge leads to droughts and affects the ecosystem of the living environments around the rivers. In recent years, we see a great disbalance due to the climate change across Europe, where we have 2/3 of the year lower than average discharge in the rivers. And in November and December, a very big volume of discharge, which leads to 158 flood notifications only for the last year. And this has an important impact on the climate conditions in the entire continent. Next slide, please. In this context, municipalities are facing a range of challenges to cope with. For example, it is in their responsibility to engage in emergency response situations, to comply with national level emergency response regulations, to implement centralized flood risk reduction measures, to face damage control needs, and to protect as much as possible the population, as well as to identify the damages and to plan the recovery of urban infrastructure and cater for inundated agricultural fields, for example, and many more. That is why the responsible for the municipalities would benefit of warnings about an upcoming flood way in advance, with indication about the flood span and the flood size, the damages that are foreseen, and information about what resources will be needed for recovery, so that they can plan and adapt their measures in compliance with the emergency response regulations and the upcoming situation. In this, can we go to the next slide, please? In this line of thoughts, a tool that will allow them to play with what-if scenarios would be very useful for planning and preparation, not only in upcoming disastrous situations, but also for regular operations as well. And here is our component from UrbanSquare, which is based on AI infrastructure, where we allow the users to check whether there is an alert for upcoming flood, and then to query and see what is the extent of the flood size, as it is seen on the screen here. Further, they can see what kind of land. Can we go to the next slide? Further, they can see what kind of land is covered by the flood. And in the example, the next. In the example here, the town is outside of the flood span, but it is possible to see what kind of agricultural land and fields are covered by the water. In the next slide, we forecast high level. We show that we forecast high water levels using Earth observation for AI method, and hence floods with up to 30 days ahead, which is useful for the officials because they can plan in advance their measures. We also offer flood simulation capability, and where they can play out what-if scenario, and via raising the discharge levels or the precipitation levels, and they can view the results. As you can see, different kinds of floodings are shown to be viewed and expected. To obtain these capabilities, we use satellite data about meteorological features like precipitation, snow cover, vegetation index, soil moisture, mixed with in-situ measurements. And integrating with Destiny will provide the opportunity for this component to be easily used on a global scale.
Thank you very much, Mariana, for this focus on our first component. Now I will show you a high-level view of the architecture of UrbanSquare. So as you might guess, UrbanSquare is built upon the destination Earth features. First, the infrastructure layer that is hosting most of our processing data, most of our data processing and data visualization applications. We also rely on destination Earth application layer, mainly to access data, also to orchestrate our different applications, and of course to also manage the user access. UrbanSquare itself is made up of different components, each addressing specific field. They all have the same high-level features, high-level structure. First, they allow to assess the current situation and visualize the current status of the territory. And then they propose what-if scenarios, as you just saw with Mariana and on the flood component. So what-if scenarios that will help urban planners to make adapted plans and plans that will be adapted to climate change. I will now let the floor to Sabrina to present a second component that is sea level rise and storm surge. Sabrina, I let you the floor.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you, Fabian. So yeah, as mentioned earlier, there are many challenges that urban areas are facing, and sea level rise is one of the most challenging urban areas along the coastlines, and it can be damaging for infrastructures, industries, and can cause population displacement. The UrbanSquare demonstrator intends to give an insight into the climate-related risks faced by the urban areas by also implementing a technical service that allows to map our future inundation risk in any area of the globe, and which is this sea level rise and storm surge component. In this graph, we can see the global mean sea level rise projections until the year 2150 in meters. These projections are derived by the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And these projections include different contributions, such as melting glaciers, and they demonstrate that the risk of sea level rise increases for each shared socioeconomic pathway or SSP. The SSPs are climate change scenarios that take into account future socioeconomic global changes. And there's 5 SSPs. The first one is the more optimistic one, in which it is assumed that society will be taking the green road towards a more sustainable planet, while the last one is the most pessimistic one, which assumes a complete fossil fueled development. Next, please. So the Global Inundation Risk Service in UrbanSquare is based on an ensemble of input data, which are the digital elevation model from Copernicus, the global human settlement layers from Copernicus, and also the ESA water bodies layer and the IPCC projections that I showed just now. The service can be quickly set up by choosing 4 parameters that are going to configure the what-if scenario. And first parameter is the year of interest. Would you like to look at the situation in 2040 or 2150? And well, there's many other years in between. And then the user can select the SSP scenario and choose whether to add a storm surge height to the model from 0 to 50 meters. And finally, the user can choose between a medium and a low confidence level, as which are the confidence level reported by the IPCC projections. The user can test out many different what-if scenarios, as our parameters cannot quickly be changed, and also compare the results in the end. The main outputs consist of a global inundation map at 30 meters, through which the user can understand the extent of potential flooding events. And the secondary output is the damage assessment data. So essentially, the user can draw a specific area of interest and extract this data regarding the number of people affected, as well as the extent of the damaged areas, built-up areas, and cultivated areas. Next, please. So to better understand how the tool works, I will show here an example of inundation risk assessment in the area of Ravenna, which is located in the Adriatic Sea coast in Italy. And it is considered to be a hotspot for climate change in the Mediterranean. And as we set up different what-if scenarios, we would like to answer questions such as what are the risks in the future? Are current prevention strategies enough? And what can the damage be due to flooding? Next, please. So every time a new what-if scenario is set up, an inundation map is displayed with flooded areas in red and protected areas in green. And we define as protected areas those areas which are below sea level but are protected by the current urban planning. And in this example, we selected the most pessimistic scenario, and we can see flooding projection in 2080. Next, please. And this is how the inundation map differs from 2080 to the year 2150. Next, please. Next slide. Thank you. Here we keep the year fixed and we change the storm surge height. We have selected the most optimistic scenario, and at the beginning on the left is the situation at 0 meter of surge, and on the right is the situation with a storm surge height of 5 meters. We can see that there's a very drastic change. Next, please. Yes. So in terms of damage assessment, more extensive local analysis can be done in order to see how the flooding events can affect the inhabitants, urban areas, and cultivated areas. In this example on the top figure, we see the damage risk is increasing from year to year as we keep the climate scenario fixed and the storm surge height fixed at 1 meter as well. And in the example at the bottom, we keep the year and surge height fixed, and we see how the inundation becomes more and more threatening from one climate scenario to the other, as it is expected. Next, please. Okay, so here we have two more examples. On the top is an example where we keep the year fixed to 2080, and we also keep the SSP fixed. But we change the storm surge height, and again, we see a very decisive increase of damage. And in the example at the bottom, we see the difference in the results when we choose between a low and medium confidence level. As a general rule, the low confidence level indicates that there's 20% chance that that event may occur, while for the medium confidence level, it's 50%. Next, please. So the capabilities of the sea level rise and storm surge component in UrbanSquare will be greatly enhanced with the integration with Destiny. And at the moment it's a global service, but thanks to the integration with Destiny, we intend to scale down to Europe in order to achieve a more robust and higher resolution service, thanks to the use of a 10-meter digital elevation model, and especially the use of the sea level projections from the climate change adaptation digital twin, which are at higher resolution.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you very much. Now we will zoom out a bit. You were talking about integration with destinationers, and we will talk a bit more about this integration at the global UrbanSquare level. As you might start to understand now, by nature, UrbanSquare needs to access very different data sets, from air quality to hydrology, from climate projection to optical or thermal imagery. So destinationers is a key enabler here because it provides a single access point to this wide range of data. We listed here the data sets that will be accessed through destinationers data lake and data cache management also. That illustrate very well the diversity and the thematic diversity of the application. I will not go through all the list, but well, that's an illustration here. Sorry. UrbanSquare also has a global aim. It starts with demonstrators. Now we are developing demonstrators focusing on some specific cities. But as UrbanSquare relies on dataset with global coverage, the plan is to have, in the end, an operational service that can be instantiated for any urban areas in the world. So besides the scalable hosting and data processing capabilities that are provided by the underlying cloud environments of destinationers, we also need an efficient and scalable access to the data, and destinationers will provide that. It's a key enabler to be able to adapt to the growing number of instantiations that we will have across the globe. I will now do a last focus, a last thematic focus, and talk about our Urban Heat component. So the Urban Heat component, it uses thermal imagery from Landsat satellites, Landsat 8-9 satellite at 30-meter resolution. And these measurements provide, it's measurement of the land surface temperature. And by combining this information with air temperature and land cover at a precise level, it provides a view of the thermal behavior of the city. And most importantly, the objective here is to highlight urban heat island areas, which means specific areas that experience higher temperature than outlying areas. That's an effect that is very specific to urban areas. The components is an online dashboard that you can see here. It's an online interactive dashboard that we have instantiated in the city of Toulouse in France. And we actually have the chance to collaborate with the Toulouse municipality on this topic, among others. So we are very happy about that. So the dashboard is composed of a map, as you can see, where we can display different variables and different layers. Here we are showing the surface temperature, the raw surface temperature variable. We also have on the bottom of the screen a graph showing the evolution of the air and ground temperature. Now it's just showing a general trend. It's quite limited in the current version, but I will develop that further as it's an important next step to work on this trend and correlation between surface temperature and air temperature. So, user can have access to different configuration here on the right. Now we are showing the surface temperature. We can show other variables. First, we can have, I would say, a first level of processing by showing the difference between land surface temperature and air temperature. And now we are starting to see some patterns in the thermal behavior of the different neighborhoods. We can also display another variable that is the land surface temperature classified into 8 classes, from 1, the cooler, to 8, the warmer. And again, it shows some patterns here. And the last level of processing will be to really highlight the urban heat island areas in the city. So here we can, for instance, see that we don't have so much urban heat island in the very city center, but it's more around the city, and I will make a focus on that. So the tool also allow to have to make some comparisons. And first, we can select some specific neighborhoods. So here we select an area in the city center of Toulouse that, well, people living in Toulouse knows very well because, well, it's an island in the center of Toulouse where we can find, for instance, the Toulouse Stadium. So it's quite well known area. And we make a comparison between aggregated data from summer 2019 compared with last summer, 2023. And here, this feature allows to evaluate the impact of some specific changes in the city. And here we can see a very clear changes on the north of the island here, where for 4 years back in time, we had a very important heat island here. Well, it was a warm area. And now, 4 years later, it's much cooler. And well, it's very easy to understand because here it was the Toulouse Conference Center that has been replaced by a green area. So it's a very straightforward and obvious example, but it's a good example to show. And so here we can evaluate with aggregated data over an entire season, what is the impact of making this area green. And we can see that it doesn't only, the impact is not only on the very local area, but it also has impact on other places, like around the city, around the area that has changed. And that is very valuable information for the urban planners. We can also perform a comparison between different neighborhoods. And here, for instance, we make a comparison between Blagnac, which is a city around Toulouse, very close to Toulouse. And actually, people coming in Toulouse from plane knows it very well because that's where you can find the airport alongside industrial areas. So it's a quite warm area. And we compare it with the city of, well, Tournefeuille, which is, again, a city very close next to Toulouse. That is a much more residential and with green areas. And we can see that the thermal patterns are not the same here. Okay. And so now some next steps for this urban heat components. We will build, or we are building what-if scenarios as for the other components. And the idea will be to provide projections on urban heat islands. And that's not an easy task because we don't have this information directly in the climate models. So our way to process here is to model the relationship that exists between air temperature and surface temperature. So we can, by analyzing a time series of data, we can see that there is a clear correlation. And this relationship also depends on the nature of the land, of the nature of the ground. And so we can model that pixel by pixel to understand what is the thermal behavior of each pixel. And then we can determine what will be the thermal behavior at some specific temperature, like 30 degrees, 35 degrees, 40 degrees. And we can then use the climate change digital twin scenarios and data to understand what will be the probable future conditions in the city. And under these conditions, map what will be the urban heat island situation. So that will be the next steps for the operational urban heat component. That's it for this component. Now we will talk a bit more in depth on how UrbanSquare will scale up and what are our plans for the coming months and years. And I will let the floor to Ravi to explain that.
Thank you, Fabien. Thanks to all our colleagues for those really, really helpful summaries. Just to clarify, although on the screen it's saying my name is Fabien, I am actually Ravi Kapoor from Imperative Space. And our role in the project is two things. We are helping to identify what the future offering is based on what's being achieved through the UrbanSquare activity, but also to continue the engagement with stakeholders and to communicate outwardly about these emerging capabilities and what the potential is for people in municipalities, but also in operational agencies associated with climate resilience and adaptation. So just keeping things at a very high level and keeping it brief, I just want to briefly summarize where our thinking is going. And it kind of splits into two components, really, with respect to thinking about how do we scale from here, how do we have wider impact. Firstly, it's about defining the offer going forward. How do we explain it? How do we capture it? And how do we present it? But it's also about really understanding user needs and adapting to those specific requirements as we gather more information. So starting with the overall offer, just to summarize a few headlines. We obviously understand that it's going to be important to bring together the multiple components within the overall UrbanSquare umbrella into a clear and coherent offering, and thinking about what user needs are in terms of who are the individual role types that will engage with these tools going forward. What's their level of technical knowledge? What sort of user experience do they need to have? That's obviously a key thing. But it's also going to be about building trust in the levels of accuracy available from these capabilities, particularly when you're making fairly medium to long-term predictions that affect policy, that affect climate adaptation expenditure, and so on. There's a need to sort of demonstrate and explain what underpins that accuracy and what the evidence for what the evidence for it is. But also one of the USPs of working with Destiny and having this combination of components that underpin the capabilities is the scientific rigor that exists behind all of that, and the wide range of data sets that are able to be drawn upon. And that's something that's not necessarily always going to be obvious to end users. That's a key part also of those communications to explain the offer. And there's a need to continually talk to and listen to stakeholders as the offer is further defined. I think that applies for all of the different use cases that are being explored at the moment in different domain areas as well. And then, of course, there's a need to capture these elements in clear communications tools and to enable knowledge exchange and indeed training as well, to help with adoption and take up of these capabilities as they emerge. So then, if you just go to the next slide, please, thinking about those user needs in a bit more detail, I think it's also important to understand that there's a differentiation between the needs of local authorities, so municipalities themselves, and the types of actors involved at that level, versus some of the more operational agencies, let's say very specific agencies involved in managing flood risk for a particular river and catchment area. And there's a set of different considerations that need to be tailored for in those contexts. There's also need to be conscious of the local and national capabilities and the investments that are being made locally, and to make sure that the offer that's being presented complements that and isn't just duplicating existing capabilities, at least in the perception of those we're trying to engage with. And then linked to that is the need to understand what are the barriers to adoption and engagement with new capabilities once they emerge. That's also down to perception sometimes. It's down to understanding the cost paradigm that individual agencies are working within as well, and trying to unlock and clarify the accessibility and availability of these capabilities. And then there is a need, again, to understand the ultra-local context as well, and to make sure tools are tailored to, or at least presented in a way that understands those local contexts. Self-evidently, some municipalities will have less need for, let's say, urban heat island components versus storm surge related components. And that's stating the obvious, but something that needs to be factored into that offering. And then finally, just thinking about the wider policy landscape, there are, of course, other drivers that affect decision-making around the adoption of these sorts of tools and capabilities at a local level. And that needs to be sort of properly understood and factored into communications and knowledge exchange around all of this going forward. So that's just keeping things very high level, brief summary of some of the thinking that's going into how we develop an exploitation plan going forward. And a lot of that is universal, I think, to other domain areas too, but there are some specific considerations there in a city's context. Okay, that's it. I hope that's helpful. And back to you, Fabien.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ravi. Well, we can now go to the question section. We were actually quite efficient and quick on the presentation. So we have time to answer many questions, I think. I hope we have.
Wonderful. Okay. You were all very quick, so that's great. I would say it's rare for a webinar to have usually we have the opposite problem of people taking too much time, but in your case, you were all very efficient. So that's wonderful. Let's open the floor for questions now. We have quite a few in already. Hopefully we have track of all of them in the Q&A tool, so let's start going through them. So the first question from an anonymous spectator is, are any municipalities already using Destiny for flood planning? I mean, in this case, I can probably clarify. So the use cases are still being developed and integrated into the Destiny platform. So they're not yet available on the Destiny platform. However, as they're all being developed, let's say on a local scale, they're all working closely with the municipality or the area that they are developing the use case for. So Sabrina mentioned Ravenna, Fabien mentioned Toulouse earlier. If you look at other use cases, City Nexus is being developed working closely with the municipality of Copenhagen. So right now, these tools are not available for all, let's say, but as they're being developed and then launched through the Destiny platform, they will be made more accessible to all municipalities. And then Ravi was speaking a little bit about the opportunities for scaling up and reaching out to those who need it. So
yeah, and for the flood component, Mosaica is actually working with a city in Bulgaria that is called Suindol. Maybe, well, Mariana, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, we have a user a municipality which get in the northern part of Bulgaria, and they have a smaller river and a dam. So we can first we discuss with them all their needs, and then what kind of problems they have with managing flood situations and in general flood related problems, we incorporate what they have as requirements into the solution, and we also pass these requirements to Fabien and to the team of UrbanSquare. So we discuss and take into consideration real user needs.
Thank you, Mariana. So hopefully that answers your question. By the way, as we're answering question, if the asker still has more to ask or wants another clarification, please feel free to raise your hand or write it, and we will get right back to you. So the second question, I'm sorry for how I will pronounce your name, but Guis van de Doel asks, in the UrbanSquare presentation, a 10-meter digital elevation model was mentioned. What is the spatial extent of this elevation model, and what is the height uncertainty of this data set? I think maybe Fabien, you have the answer to this.
We mentioned that for the high resolution European sea level rise scenario, I think. Maybe I can let Sabrina answer that.
Yeah, I definitely mentioned it during my presentation. As a next step to improve the robustness and resolution of the sea level rise component, the 10-meter elevation digital elevation model from ESA is covering the main European region, the 39 countries, plus some overseas islands as well. And so that's the spatial extent. What is the height in meters? Height uncertainty. So the vertical accuracy is less than 4 meters. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Sabrina. And Emmanuel Mondon asks if UrbanSquare is leveraging only data coming from the Destiny platform, or rather from the Destiny data lake and the digital twins, or also algorithms, and if yes, which ones?
So I understand. Well, do we use only data from destination Earth, or do we use other sources? Basically, that's the question. Yeah, we use many other sources. For instance, for the infrastructure and road damage part, we will use high-resolution planet images from commercial offer that we will combine with the data from destination Earth. Yeah, and we use also some socioeconomic data from other sources. We use OpenStreetMap data also. So we have many different outside sources that we combine with data from destinationers. The main point is that for the data sources that we required, the big data flows, big data processing, we rely on destinationers to really stay scalable. That's the idea here.
Thank you very much, Fabian. So Gis again asks, what are the input datasets for the urban heat island analysis, and is the downscaling methodology publicly available, as most of the input datasets will not have the same spatial and temporal resolutions?
So we use Landsat data that has a resolution. Well, it's a native resolution of 100 meter, but after well, in the end, we have it at 30 meter resolution after resampling. And we combined it with 10 meter land cover map from ESA. We do not have this combination publicly available yet, but it might be at some point open source. Well, it's not, it's still under development.
Thank you, Fabian. And it's going to come back to you again because it's another question on the heat island, on the urban heat island effect. Jordi Cipriano asks, which is the size of the grid for the input data and for the output data, and how did you scale down the raw data from Destiny, as it's one of the data sources you use?
Well, we did not scale down the thermal data from Landsat. We work at the resolution at 30 meter. For the visualization, we aggregated the data at 100 meter just for visualization purposes and convenience. But we work at the 30 meter resolution, and then we aggregate by neighborhood or by specific areas. So we do not downscale the base information.
I see. Okay, now to Sabrina. Elisa Filippi asks, was the municipality of Ravenna directly involved in the study development?
No, unfortunately, not at this time. We have prepared a few use cases, and the Ravenna one among the European cases was the one that stood out the most. There are other few, but there's many other notable use cases, but are mostly outside of Europe, such as the Bahamas, Florida, Cairo. So we just wanted to keep this presentation focused on the European area. That's why we chose Ravenna.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina. The next question from Anonymous is, will these use cases and related services be made available through the DESP? And if so, is the DESP taking on the responsibility of maintaining and operating these services? Okay, I can answer this. The answer is yes. All of these use cases are being done to validate the Destiny platform service, and then they will be integrated into the Destiny platform. So yes, ESA is taking on the responsibility as part of the Destination Earth initiative, because ESA is the partner that is contributing the Destiny platform. So you can rest assured that this is definitely something that they are committed to, and that they have long-term plans to keep going, and it's in their best interest to make it comprehensive and efficient. Okay. Jan Mateo asks, can you develop more on the air quality use case, and does Destiny provide air quality forecasts? I'm not sure if you use the data from Destiny for the air quality. Maybe Fabian, you can answer this.
Yeah, I can answer this. So for the air quality component, well, we did not show it here because we cannot show everything, but very good that we can complement this with this question. So for this air quality component, we first show current and historical status at a 1 kilometer resolution. And this 1 kilometer resolution, we use the 10 kilometer resolution data from Copernicus atmosphere that we downscale. For this component, we do downscaling actually, based on ground information, based on human activity information. Well, we have developed a 1 kilometer super resolution model for this air quality data that we use to show current situation and current status. This model includes meteorological information, because air quality is influenced mostly by human activity, but also very influenced by meteorological conditions like wind, temperature, precipitations. So we include this information in the model. And this model, we can then use it to play some scenarios, like if we change some parameters in the meteorological conditions, what will be the impact on air quality? Like if we have higher temperatures, what will be the impact on air quality? And so we can show that through the output of the model. And so we can inject in this model the data from the Destination Earth climate change digital twin. That's the interesting part here. We can also have some scenarios where we change parameters in the human activity. Like if we have less car traffic, less urbanization, what will be the foreseen impact on air quality in the future? So that's how we use, that's how we develop what if scenarios here, and that's how we inject these climate change projections. But it's long-term projections here, because Copernicus atmosphere also provide short-term forecasts, like 7 to 10 days forecasts. We do not include that in the tool because it's not, well, it's not really what urban planners want. What they want are long-term projections. And this, well, you cannot find them directly on Copernicus atmosphere service.
Okay, that actually partially answers one of the next questions. So Emmanuel Mondon asks, what are the benefits for UrbanSquare using Destiny rather than the Copernicus data space ecosystem? You mentioned one, Fabian. Are there any others that you would like to highlight?
I would say, well, high-level resolution, like 1 kilometer resolution. For urban areas, it's really a key feature because it allows to have an analysis at the neighborhood level rather than the whole city level. And so there is one. And the second is to be able to have long-term projection, actually, to play scenarios where you can evaluate what will be the impact of, well, climate change on one hand, but also some urban change, like if you are reducing car traffic somewhere, what will be the expected impact?
Okay, thank you, Fabian. I will field this next one because it's on Destiny in general again. So, Padraig, I'm sorry for for the pronunciation. When these use cases are put on the Destiny platform, will they be adaptable to other municipalities? And can we integrate our own datasets that are not in Destiny, e.g. national high-resolution climate projections? So yes and yes is the short answer. The whole idea is that the use cases are being done to let's say validate the Destiny platform. So they start as more local, but then once they are put on the Destiny platform, they are adaptable to other scenarios. Otherwise, they would not be so useful to the Destiny community, let's say at large. And yes, you can integrate your own data sets. So there is a major Destiny component, which is the data lake, which is sort of a more advanced data space that is also being developed. It's not being developed by ESA. It's being developed by UMETSAT, which is another partner. And the whole idea is that you can interact with the data that is available on Destiny in a very advanced way. So you can import your own data, you can use the data that is already there, you can select which types of data to use from the data lake. So it's very interactive and it's very compatible with external data as well. And you can even provide your own data to be integrated into the data lake. So the whole idea is that in the long term, this really is adaptable to any scenario and with any data that you want to add yourself. So yes, is the answer to both of your questions, essentially. Okay, now another question is, okay, I cannot answer this one, so I'll have to pass it back to you, is why was the 10-meter ESA land cover used, which is available for 2020 and 2021, but the years are not compatible, and the Corinne data at 100 meter has time series data available to look at other years? Fabian, I don't know if you want to speak on this.
Yeah, well, we use this land cover because of the high resolution. I would say 10 meter. It's quite a good resolution. We don't really need well, we don't really need a long historical view here. That will be the short answer. And the Corinne land cover, well, 100-meter resolution will not be enough for our use case, as we are working with a 30-meter thermal behavior resolution. But well, for instance, if I go back to the example I showed on the island where the land changed, we do not measure that through land cover change. We really measure it through thermal behavior change. And so indeed, the land cover has not changed from 2019 to 2023. Well, we have the same data, but we can still see the difference in thermal behavior. So yeah, we do not need to have a yearly land cover for the use case to work. That's the main yeah, that's the short answer if you have to remember something.
And if anyone wants, if anyone wants to keep in touch with Destiny or with the organizers, if you're interested, you can drop your email, and if you have any questions, we can then follow up. So an anonymous spectator asks, are there any upcoming calls for use cases planned? So I think that the calls for use cases specifically are probably finished, because the goal is to validate the platform. And then once it is validated, they will go on to calls for services rather than use cases. So slightly different call, but you can find them in the procurement section on the website, which I just sent in the chat now. Right now, there aren't any because we have just finished launching the platform. So we will be planning more. Keep an eye out on the procurement section, keep an eye out on the news section on the platform in general to make sure that when these calls for services are launched, you don't miss them. And then in the chat, Ludek asks, because he's working on a methodology to assess and model the potential of tourism industry at the regional level. Sorry. Is it possible to use the Destiny data in a data space-based system to assess the influence of climate change on the regional tourism landscape, to model trends, and to plan climate adaptation expenditure that can also be used for tourism purposes? So Is it possible to use the Destiny data? Yes, of course. Whether or not there will be a Destiny platform service that does this specifically, I cannot say. But for sure, you can either use the data for yourself if you have a model, or you can maybe try using a model like that, which is being developed by CityNexus, which specifically looks at how adding points of interest to different locations can change the flow of traffic and can change air quality and other issues. So similar concepts are already being worked on. I don't know if this service specifically will be available.
Maybe I can add something here.
Of course.
Well, this question is very interesting because at Narration, our first economic the first economic sector that we address is tourism, before urbanism, actually. So, well, I would be very interested in having a discussion with this person. That's not something that we address specifically in UrbanSquare, like the impact of tourism and how the tourism activity is impacting the environment in general, but that's something that we work on also at Narration. So feel free to contact me if you want to have some discussions on the topic.
Fabian, maybe if you want to just send the person your email, or if you want to write it in the chat. I mean, probably you won't get spam.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. Someone asked if there is information on timing of the call for services. Unfortunately, I don't have this information because basically, as we are the go-between for ESA, we are only informed once the call is ready to go out. So I can tell you probably nothing before September. But then they want to get more services for the platform integrated. So definitely, if you don't want to keep refreshing the procurements page all the time, subscribe to the Destiny newsletter and keep an eye on the news pages, and you will surely notice as soon as those calls go out. So I will post the link for the newsletter right now. Okay. I think that's it for the questions. Does anyone have any final questions or want to ask any clarifications? Jorn is here. He rightly points out that ECMWF has a Destiny pilot service, ITT, that was published last week. Okay, it's in the chat. Thank you, Jorn, for that. Okay. If there are no further questions, then I think, wait, let me, Valeria, actually, could you post the link for the newsletter? Thank you. Okay, so thank you all for being here today. It was a very productive discussion. Thank you also for the UrbanSquare consortium for being here. We really appreciate their time. We had a lot of questions. That was great, more than on average, actually. Feel free to reach out to Fabien or to any of us if you have more questions, or if you have any inquiries. If not, you will find the recording of this webinar on the event page soon, and keep an eye out for future events. All right. Thank you all very, very much, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.